أهلا وسهلا بيكم يا شباب، معانا في المحاضرة ال 14 والخاصة بالثيرد برضه اللي احنا بنتكلم عنه خاص بالبرودكشن. So we start our course by what is economics and why economics is important, and then we go in more details for microeconomics. We're studying the market theory from both sides, demand and supply, consumer and seller, and then market equilibrium and the elasticity. And now we are in the new part, which is related to um the production theory. So what is in the production theory? So production theory is about how to run your business, how to operate your business. Or you can say we need to understand the behavior of producers. So as we said, that any producer open his business for a profit, and the profit is come from revenue and cost. So in order to know how we can maximize our profit, how we can run our business, we need to measure the cost and the revenue and how we can maximize our profit, or even in some cases, how we can minimize our loss. So before we go into the cost, we start um, last lecture talking about something called production process. So what is the production process? Actually, as we know, we have input, input, and we do something for this input or produced to able to create something new, which is called output. So this is a system. Any system include input, process, and output. So this part is a production process. So production simply is converting input to be output. So if you remember the last example, we were talking about producing sandwiches. So what is the input we need? Like we need workers, we need um, hamburger, we need ketchup, for instance, um, and we do some operation for this, and this output we have sandwich. So let's say that we have uh, two type of factor of production, as we said. We have oven and we have workers. This is the input we have. So oven represent a capital variable and worker represent the labor variable. And if we are in the short term, or another way, we can say that if we are just changing the number of worker, number of labors we have, so we are in the short term. But when we are possible to change the number of oven we have, like buying a new one, so we are in the long term. So long term or short term is based on how you control on your factor of production. So if some of your input is still fixed, so you are in the short term. If all of your input is changing at the same time, so this is in long term. So you have oven and workers, they're doing cooking until to reach to the output, which in our case is sandwich. Okay. So we, for more illustration about the production, if you remember, we know that if we have uh, let's say, so if we have number of workers here, and this is a queue for production, we know based on the previous illustration, the production will be like this way, total production. Why? Because firstly, the production increase by increasing rate, okay, and then increase, yes, but in decreasing rate, and then become decreased. So we know that when we produce in a two stage. The first stage when the production increasing by increasing rate, and then increasing by decreasing rate, and then decreased. The reason for that, when we know by how much each worker lead to increase in our production. So the added value, the additional value of each worker, the productivity of each worker. So if you remember, the productivity of each worker would be like this: no worker, no productivity, and then productive, and then the productivity become decreasing until we reach to zero, and maybe we will reach to negative. So this is the marginal product. So why total product is like this shape? So increasing by increasing rate, and then increasing by decreasing rate, and then decreasing, simply based on the marginal product. The marginal product is still, this is a marginal product, and this is number of workers we have. Okay. So as much as more worker working, their productivity increase, but more than capacity we have, so their productivity become lower and lower. Like, let's say we have two, if we have just two oven, so one workers is not enough, two workers maybe okay, three workers, four workers, so we just have just two oven with a specific let's say kitchen space. So because some of our resources is still fixed, like here, so we are not possible to increase the productivity of each labor. So the productivity, yes, it increased firstly, okay, until we reach to maximum, and then become decreased until we reach to zero. Zero means what? This is a marginal product. Marginal product mean the productivity of each labor individually, how each worker, how each labor at your organization added to your product. ايه قيمة كل واحد عندك في الشركة بتاعتك، البرودكتيفيتي بتاعته لوحده قد ايه. Some workers, their productivity is negative. That means they're wasting the time of their colleagues. Okay. طيب. So today we'll start by a new part, which is the main one, how we can measure the cost. So we need to know what is the cost, the meaning of cost. Cost. So it's possible to say if we're using the same example when we are producing sandwich within a specific kitchen. So we have two types of uh, input. So we said we have workers and we said we have oven. So let's assume that workers earn wages or we pay wages for worker, okay? And how much it costs? For example, let's say it's 80 pound per worker per day. So each worker earn 80 uh, $80 or 80 pound per day. And as we said, we have oven. So the oven, we buy a new one. Let's say we have two oven or one oven, whatever it is, three, whatever the amount is. And let's say it's the rent or the price of the oven is 100. Okay. So capital here or the oven, or even we can say this is type of the rent is a fixed cost. This what is fixed cost. This is fixed cost. And number of workers or the wages for workers, this will be variable cost. Variable cost and fixed cost. So what is difference between fixed cost and variable cost? Fixed cost is a cost which is independent or not related directly to output. So whatever of the sandwich you produce, you have to oven in your kitchen. Okay, you produce one sandwich, you produce 10 sandwich, you produce 1,000 sandwich, you still you have to oven. Okay, or if we are talking about the rent, so you pay a rent for the place per month. So if you didn't use the kitchen at all during that month, so you will pay the same rent. If you use it on daily basis, you will pay the same rent. Okay, so the fixed cost, this is type of cost which is not related to your production, while number of workers, which is a variable cost, here when the cost is related to your production. So you need to produce more sandwich, you need more workers. You need more sandwich, you need more burger. Okay, so variable cost, which is not related to the production, fixed cost, which is related, sorry, to production, fixed cost, which is not related to production. Okay, so let me have an example for you to complain the understanding of what is the relation between the production and the cost. And of course, let me here return back. So variable cost and fixed cost together, uh, uh, so we have the total cost. Okay, so the total cost, it's possible to say here, total cost is equal fixed cost, which is the cost not related to the production. It's a fixed payment, like insurance. Insurance is a fixed cost. So your insurance payment for your car. Okay. So if you being biannual, right? So if you didn't use your car at all, or even use your car once per month or on daily basis, so on all cases, at the end of the year, you will pay the same amount. So it doesn't matter how much you use, it doesn't matter how much you produce, but this is a fixed payment. And the second type, which is a variable cost. Okay. So let's have an example. So here we have uh, so here we have, okay, first we have number of workers working in my kitchen, and then they produce number of sandwich. So this is number of sandwich. Okay. Uh, so if we say that we have first starting by 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 until 6 workers. Okay. And of course we know that we have fixed amount of oven. We have just 2 oven for them. So what would change now? Number of workers, because we are in the short term. So how many sandwich we have? So when we have no workers, so of course we don't have any sandwiches. The first worker produce, at the end we have 40 sandwich. If they are two together, they produce 90. If you remember the term together. So the first one produced 40. The second one is producing 50, more than the first one, because they are working together. They collaborate and they cooperate together. So this is the power of cooperation. When we have a 3 workers, they produce 120, and then 4 workers 135, and then 140 when they are 5, and 142 if they are 6. Okay. So number of sandwich, what this is the total product, if you remember. So this is we're increasing by increasing rate, and then increasing by decreasing rate, and then uh, uh, eventually will be decreased. So here we can see that the marginal product is 40, right? And then, excellent, 50. Okay. And what else? From 90 to 120 to 30. Oh, so it's increasing, and now it decreased 30. 15. Okay. 5, and then 2. So if we draw this one here, we'll find the total product increase by increasing rate, and then by decreasing rate until we reach to here. And maybe if we continue this, it will be decline. But we are not interested in this part, because no one were working while the production is negative. Okay. So we're just working on the 2 stages of production, stage 1 and stage 2. Why the total product by this way? Because the marginal product starting from 0, 40, 50 up maximum, and then become decreased. So this is the marginal product. Fine. Okay. Okay. So let's continue again with another column, which is um, fixed cost. So what do you expect about fixed cost? So we have just two oven. This is the only type of fixed cost we have. So whatever the production is, just have we pay the rent for this oven. So 100. Even when we have no workers, yes. Even we don't have no work. Even when we have no production, yes. When we have no production or no sandwich, because we already paid regardless the number of the production. But if I have one worker produce 40, still I will pay the same amount. Okay, so the fixed cost will be equal or the same regardless on the number of production, amount of production, and number of workers. So what will be change here is the variable cost. So what is the variable cost again? Variable cost, this is the cost which is needed for the production, like number of workers. So we paying if we have no workers, so we don't have any variable cost. Okay, thank you. But if I have one worker and he paying 80 pound per day, so will be a variable cost here each. If they are two, each one of them, huh, each one of them will will take 80 pound. So at the end, two workers will pay for them 160, three 240, four 320, five exactly 400, six 480. So you can see here the variable cost, which is here the wages for worker. Uh, so how we can number of workers times uh, the wage per day. Okay, and of course we will have the total cost. Total cost. Total cost. This is together equal variable cost with fixed cost. So 100 plus 0 100, 100 by 80, 180, 100, 260, and so on. To 260, 340, okay, 420, 500, and 580. Okay. This is the total cost. So again, if we can see what we can see here, while the total product, this one, increase by decreasing rate, like this one, total product here, mm, increasing this way. So this is the total product. So this is here number of workers, and here this is amount of the Q, the production. But we can see uh, the opposite direction for the total product. So total product here increasing by increasing rate. So it will take this shape. Okay. Again, I will not ask you to draw any graph, but this is for your understanding. So the total cost, not starting from zero. Okay. So if we can draw fixed cost, so fixed cost is a fixed, so it's 100. So this is a fixed cost. So regardless uh, the Q, which is um, the output, the cost will be fixed, right? But for the variable cost, you can see variable cost here increase from 0 to 80, and then 160, and then 240, and so on. So the variable cost increasing by decreasing rate. So it will take this shape. This is the variable cost. And the same for the total cost. So the total cost let me draw in much bigger. Okay. So here, this is a fixed cost, which is not related to the production, which is Q, and this is cost. While if we have two stage of production, the variable cost first increase by increasing rate, by decreasing rate, and then we'll take this one. This is the variable cost. And because variable cost and total and fixed cost is equal total cost, so the total cost will start from here and will take the same slope. So, this is the total cost. And the difference or the distance between total cost and variable cost, total cost and variable cost, the gap between them should be the fixed cost. And the fixed cost is amount not changed. So the space here should be the space here, which is the space here. Okay. So variable cost and total cost will be parallel to each other. And remember, when the Q equals 0 here, variable cost equal 0 as well, and the total cost will equal fixed cost. So if we return to our table, yes, we can find when the output here equals 0, variable cost equal 0 as well, and the fixed cost equal total cost. Is it clear? Okay. So what we try to do now is to understand why it's happening. نكمل يا شباب الجزء الخاص بالكوست. يبقى احنا بدأنا تاني again we start by workers, number of worker, number of sandwich. Okay. the fixed cost, which is fixed, not to change, variable cost, which is depend on the output we have. And in our example, this is number of workers, wages worker, and the total cost, which is the sum of variable cost and fixed cost together. So we know the trend now. The total cost increase by increasing rate. So why it's happening? Simply because we have something called marginal cost. So what is a marginal cost? Marginal cost, simply, this is a change in total cost over a change on quantity. Or in another way, we can say this is the cost per unit. So what is the marginal cost? The marginal cost, this is the cost per unit when we produce extra new unit. يعني the change here, the total cost, it change from to change from 100 to 180. So that's mean the marginal cost would be 80, right? Over a change in quantity. So the quantity changed by 40. So 80 over 40, can do different way. 80 over 40 equal 2. So 2 means what? Means this is the cost. You should be in second line because this is a change. So the change should be here. So 80 over 40, which is equal to. So 2 here, this is the cost for producing one sandwich when we have one worker. Okay, so simply because the total cost is 180. احنا التوتال كوست كلها 180. Okay, and we produce 40 sandwich. Okay, so the change, or the if we have one worker, so the cost per sandwich will be 2. But if we have 2 workers, so the total cost will be 260. 260. So the change in total cost by how much? 100 over the marginal product, which is 50. So it will be 1.6. So again, a change, the change. So this is the change in total cost. And this is a change on Q. Okay. So the marginal cost is 2, and then 1.6. So it decline, and then it will be 2.7, 5.3, 16, and 40. So what happened here? The marginal cost is declining from 2 to 1.6, and then starts to increase drastically. So if we can draw the marginal cost will be like this one, like Nike shape. Decrease from 2 to 1.6, and then huge increase. Why it's happening? Because simply the cost increase when you hired more workers working. So that means more wages, more cost. While in fact, their productivity is decreasing. So I will try to illustrate more. So here is a cost increase, and each time the costs increase. Why the cost increase by this way? Because the number of worker increase and their cost increase. The variable cost, which is represents their wages, is increasing. Right. So you hire more people and you're paying more salary. Fine. But what happened about their productivity? Their productivity firstly was high, 40, 50, okay, and after two workers, the productivity for the third labor become lower. It's 30, 15, 5, and 2. So simply this is what happened. Uh, 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 Production not increasing too fast while cost increasing very fast. Okay. So this is what when I'm talking about. So now we understand what is the cost, the meaning of the cost, how we can calculate the fixed cost and variable cost and total cost and marginal cost as well. Okay. So other important concept, which is hmm, something called average fixed cost. So what is the average fixed cost? Simply average fixed cost is the fixed cost over the Q, the production. So I can say it's possible to say average fixed cost is the fixed cost per unit. Fixed cost per unit. So uh, here there is no unit, so there is no average. But here the fixed cost is 100 and we produce 40. So the average fixed cost will be 100 over 40, which is equal 2.5. 2.5. Okay. So if I have two, I'm sorry, this is not, yes, okay. So 100, this is the how it's where it's come from. We have fixed cost is 100, we're still 100, while Q here is 40. Okay. So 2.5. Next, the fixed cost is still 100, but the Q here is is 90. Excellent. Then 100 and the Q 120, 100 and 135, 100 and 140, 100 and 142. You can see. So fixed cost, because it's fixed, is not change. What did change? The Q, the total output we produce. So as much as you produce more, as much as the average fixed cost come lower and lower. So we start by 2.5 and then 1.1, 0.8, 0.74, 0.71, and 0.70. Why it's happening? Because the fixed cost is not changed and the quantity change. So in each time we produce more, huh, the average fixed cost become lower. So if we need to draw average fixed cost will be like this way. Why became this way? Because the fixed cost is not changed while the Q it's increase. So the Q, because Q increase, the cost become declining. Okay, right. So this is the average variable cost. We have another type of averages, which is average variable cost. Still the same, variable cost over Q. So what is uh, uh, the variable cost per unit? So it's the same thing. But here, what is the difference? Is the variable cost is increasing. So it's 80, 160, 100, 240, 320, 400, 480. So both things increase. So variable cost here, 80 over 40, which is equal to, okay, type. Next, what is the variable cost? 160 over how many sandwich you produce? 90. So the variable cost will be 1.7. Next, what is the variable cost? 240. What is the amount for which you produce? 120. Okay, so the average variable cost or the variable cost per unit would be 2. Okay, so it's decline and now return to increase. Next, 2.3. Next, 2.8. Next, 3.3. That's mean if we need to draw average variable cost, it will decrease and then increase, like a marginal cost exactly. Okay. Okay. So the last important measure, which is total average total cost. So what is the average total cost? So the total cost per unit. So total cost over Q. So here we need to measure how each sandwich increase the cost, or the cost, the total cost per sandwich or per unit. So so it's possible to sum 2.6 to add 2.5 and 2, so it will be 4.5. Or total cost, which is 140, 180, sorry, 180 over Q, which is 40. So 180 over 40 equal the same thing, 4.5. 1.1 and 1.7, 2.8. Uh, different approach. Three, let's see, 340. This is the total cost over Q, 120. So it equal, yes, 3.1, 2.8, 2.8 as well. Okay, 2.8. Then 2.3 and 0.71. So it equal 3.1. 2.8 and 71, 0.71. So it will equal 3.5. 3.3 and 0.70 would equal, let's say, 4.1. So two possible way to measure uh, average total cost. Even you say that total cost over Q, or it's possible to say that uh, um, average total cost equal average fixed cost plus average variable cost. Okay, so we start by how many workers we have, how many sandwiches produced, what is the fixed cost to oven 100, not to change, variable cost, which is the amount of wages, total cost, which is the summation of variable cost and uh, uh, and fixed cost, marginal cost, which is the change in total cost, this one over the change of this one. So what is the additional cost of each new sandwich we produced, and later we reach to the averages measurement. So the averages, this is measure the cost per unit on average. What is the fixed cost for each unit on average, for the variable cost as well, and for total cost as well. Okay. So why we are doing that? We need to measure, this one is the most critical one, average total cost. Average total cost. It's very important measure. What is the average total cost means? Means this is the total cost per unit. How much each unit costs you. So the uh, the first, when we have one worker here, on average, the cost of sandwich is 4.5 pound. يبقى what is the meaning of 4.5? This means that this is the cost per sandwich. So what is the difference between this and this? Marginal cost 2 here, this is the when we produced extra new sandwich, increase the cost by 2 pound. But here 4.5 means this is the average cost per sandwich. So when you produce more, we hire more workers, so the cost per unit, the total cost per unit become lower, 2.8. And then when we have 3 workers, the total cost is 2.8. But if you hired worker number 4, which produce total 135 sandwich, oh, the cost per sandwich will be 3.1, which is mean the cost increase, the cost per sandwich increase, and then increase again to 3.5, and then increase again to 4.1. So what does it mean? That means worker number 3, when he produced 120 sandwich with the cost 2.8, this is the lowest cost per sandwich. This is what lowest cost per sandwich. This is when you use your resources in the best possible way. ده أفضل وضع، ده أفضل production level. أهو when you minimize your cost. يبقى number of worker, this is the best number of worker in your kitchen. Why? Because when you hire the just 3 labor, you will be able to minimize or lowest to achieve the lowest cost of sandwich, or you use your resources in the best possible way. Okay. Is it clear? Try to do this example by yourself. So let's again try to draw these graphs for more understanding. So fixed cost is a fixed, not a changed. While the variable cost starts from 0 and is starting by increasing by the increasing rate and then by increasing rate. The variable cost increasing by this way. This is a fixed cost. Total cost, it's the sum of total cost, which is equal fixed cost plus variable cost. So it's increase, and we try as much as possible to make it equal. So this space should be equal this space. Why? Because the difference between them, this is a fixed cost. And for the rest of functions, again, this is what here, this is a Q, or the output we produce, and here this is the cost, which is measured by dollar for us. Any currency. So let's start by the first one. Average fixed cost. Average fixed cost, which is decrease, start from 2000, from 2.5, decreased. Why decreased? Because fixed cost over quantity. So if we return do some equation here. So again, total cost equal fixed cost plus variable cost, if or over quantity. So average total cost equal average fixed cost plus average variable cost. So because fixed cost here is constant, not a change, and the Q is change, gradually increase. So average fixed cost would be a declining line like this way. Okay. It's much better. And the marginal cost, here to 1.6, and then starting to increase. the same like a variable, the same like an average total. اهو تعالى بقى let's try to draw it one by one. So the marginal cost would be like Nike shape to decrease and then increase. This is the marginal cost. The same average variable cost. The same average so this is the average variable cost and this is the average total cost. And you can see here the space or the distance between them become declining. Here is not like here, because what is the difference between them? This is the average fixed cost, which is already declining, like here. So we'll start by 2, if you remember, 2.5, and then we go less and less. So simply, this is why the gap between them become declining. It will not be equal 0, because fixed cost will never be 0, but at the end, the gap declining between them. Okay. طيب. هتيجي بتقول لنا بقى كل الكلام ده ليه، او احنا عاوزين نوصل لايه من الستوري الطويله دي؟ احنا عايزين نعرف how we can, if we are talking about cost, so we need to minimize the cost as much as possible. طيب. So the point when I'm making the average total cost any minimum point هي in table when we have a 3 worker, okay, when we have a 3 worker produced 120 sandwich. So when we produce 120 sandwich here, so this is the minimum level of cost. Okay. So we try to be very close to this point. This is what we're looking for. So let me summarize the story. So the story starts from we need to understand production process. We need to understand the producer behavior. So anyone have a business aim to achieve profit. To achieve profit, we need to measure the revenue and the cost. So in order to measure the cost, this is when you know in which stage you are in short term or long term. If we are in short term, like in our case, we need to know what is the best number of workers. Why? Because the cost, we have 2 types of cost. We have fixed cost and variable cost, which is together calculate the total cost. We are interested to measure total cost and fixed cost and variable cost, as well as marginal cost, which is a change in the total cost. Okay. Also, we know that an average total cost equal average fixed cost plus average variable cost. Again, what's the difference between fixed cost and variable cost? Fixed cost, which is not related to the production, but while variable cost, which is related to the production. Uh, and we try to make the total average total cost in a minimum way. Okay, and we know there is an inverse relation or the opposite relation between the production and the cost. You hired more people, but their productivity decreasing by time. Okay, so on another side, the cost will first decrease and then more hiring people hiring more people leading first to decrease in the cost, but because their productivity become lower and lower, their costs become increase more and more. So in next lecture, inshallah, we will learn how we can measure the revenue and then the profit. أشوفكم إن شاء الله المحاضرة الجاية ولو if you have any questions please send to me on our Moodle. أشوفكم على خير. باي باي.